Hello and welcome to Inside OUSD. I'm John Sasaki. It is Arab American Heritage Month, and we wanted to bring in one of our leaders from the Office of Equity, Sabria Hassan. So, Sabria, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this important time in our school year. But first, before we get to that, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. You're from Oakland, right?
Yes, I am Oakland born and raised. I attended OUSD K through 12.
Which
Uh,
schools?
I actually attended Franklin Elementary, then went over to Roosevelt Middle School, and then Sojourner Truth Independent Study for my freshman and sophomore year, and then attended Skyline for junior and senior year. So I'm a graduating class of 2011.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
fantastic. And then you just couldn't keep away, huh?
No, I have strong roots here in Oakland, and I attended SF State after that, and just wanted to give back to my community. I also, I'm a mother of two beautiful children who
Wonderful.
also attend OUSD schools. So
Fantastic.
proud.
Keep it in the family. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so after graduation from San Francisco State, then you started to do the work in the community?
Yes. So I did take a little pause through volunteering at the local masjid with the community. Like for instance, our family would always host like Thanksgiving dinners at our store, as well as Christmas dinner. But then I worked as the AAYSP program manager for about the last 3 years.
And A is what?
YSP.
YSP. Tell me what that is.
Stands for American Association of Yemeni Students and Professionals. So I focused on the California chapter. So it was started in Chicago. It's also branched out to Dearborn, Michigan, which has a large, high concentration of Arab Americans. And then we recently, expanded to our California chapter.
And so you did that for about 6 years, is that right?
I would say 3.5 years.
3.5 years, and
Mhm.
then you moved to the district when?
This school year,
This school year.
actually,
You're
yeah.
pretty new to the family
Well,
here.
I worked closely with the Office of Equity as the AAYSP program manager. So we partnered closely. We're still partnered with AAYSP, and so I've really grown to love the team and decided to come and join.
Fantastic. So okay, so from that perspective, from the outside perspective, kind of partner perspective, and also the district perspective, what would you say that Arab American Heritage Month means to you, and what does it mean in general?
Arab American Heritage Month. It's relatively new. It was celebrated in the 90s by a few states, but then it didn't become official until 2017. So that's when it became recognized as a National Heritage Month, and it's really celebrating the contributions of Arab Americans in society. The culture, the heritage, the often untold narratives that you don't get to see, especially in classrooms. Growing up here in OUSD, I'm a product of OUSD, and I'm proud. But unfortunately, when I was a student, I didn't get to see that narratives. I didn't really get to see people from my community being represented within the classroom setting. And so that's what we stand for here, and we make sure that that's what we see happening in our classrooms today.
And just to go back even a little bit further, the contributions of the Arabs to the world have been enormous. I mean, in science, we all use Arab numerals.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of things that people don't even think about.
Yeah.
That
Believe it or not, here in 2023, some folks don't even know what it means to be Arab. And when we think of Arab American, it's people who tie their roots to an Arab country. There's about 22 Arab countries, and which is known as the Arab League of States. Just to name a few, it stretches out from Northern Africa to Western Asia, and we'll name a few, which is Libya, Algeria,
Saudi Arabia.
Tunisia and North Africa, as well as Egypt. And then we have Saudi Arabia, we have Qatar, we have Bahrain, we have Oman, we have Yemen, we have Jordan, we have Syria, we have Palestine.
And I would think we have
Iraq,
students from all of these places too.
and part of some African countries known as Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti. So it's definitely, there are so many different types of Arabs, and so many different Arab nations that really fall under this umbrella.
Very good. And so, how would you say that what we're doing this month advances the mission of OUSD and what we do every day?
It's really just, highlighting the contributions and the narratives of marginalized groups that we don't see. Like, for instance, here, like, we're so used to like the misconceptions and misinformations that we get from the mass media that is tied back to Orientalism, right? And so it's making sure that we are creating inclusive, diverse classroom settings and making sure that we are centering these narratives and that our students feel a sense of belonging because we're growing up and you don't see that in the classroom, it definitely takes a toll. You might experience imposter syndrome when you're going into college, but you definitely want to be able to lift these voices up and show representation. And so our students can feel a sense of belonging, can feel heard, can feel respected, and that we can all coexist amongst each other.
I hate to do this, but I think I have to stop for a second. And I have to ask you, the hijab is to cover your hair, right?
Yes.
I do see some of your hair in the front. Is that a problem?
No, I mean, I
Okay.
mean, there's so many different ways to wear the hijab.
Okay. Okay.
Ideally, it is to cover your hair, but there's so many different ways. For some, it's like, you know, just the way you wear it. It
Okay.
really kind of expresses in your just your personality. Like
Okay.
you kind of see it through the way you wear the hijab. And just since you brought that up, it's very important to note that not all Arabs are Muslims and not all Muslims are Arabs. When we really think about who are Arab Americans, you really think you go back in time, and we've been here since the 1880s. You know, that dates back, and it kind of plays into like, okay, we'll talk a little bit more about the fact that we don't have a racial category within the national census. But from that time, prior to 1965, the majority of Arab immigration was from Arab Christian communities. We also have Jewish communities. We have here in Yemen, we have Jewish Yemenite communities that coexist and live side by side with one another. So that's something that we don't see in the media. And when we think of Arab Muslims, they're a small minority. They represent 1/5 of the 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. Here in America, there are a small minority. Majority of Muslims in America are actually Black Muslims. So that's just something to keep in mind and we don't see. So that's why Arab American heritage is very important in making sure that we are correctly representing this group.
I bring up the hijab because I've known women who, you know, they absolutely cover all of their hair, and it's a kind of a strict adherence to the way they view the religion. In yours, it's different. Can you explain though what the hijab is, since we're talking about it?
Yeah. So hijab to me, really, it represents modesty. Um, it allows people to view you for your personality, your character, as opposed to judging you for your looks. Here in the West, it's uh, the way we dress, or like it's just like we focus so much on how we look or having makeup on, which is great. Like everyone has a right to express themselves and their identity. But then again, for me, the hijab is you can judge me for who I am, for my character, before you judge me for my looks. And it's just a way to really represent oneself and one's true character, as opposed to, objectifying a person for their looks and for the way they present them through clothing.
And there is kind of a continuum as to how pronounced the use of it is, or how required the use of it is. I mean, because you're the way you're talking about it is more kind of a choice.
Yeah, it is a choice. So in Islam, if we're talking about Islam, which is separate from Arab identity, Islam, you cannot force anyone to submit to wear the hijab. It's choice. And we have to be careful and not overgeneralize, because the way Muslims choose to manifest their religion is there's a lot of diversity in that. So you might see some women who wear the burqa. You might see just wear the hijab. You might see there are a lot of Muslim women who don't choose to wear the hijab, which is completely okay. Sometimes culture does overlap. And if you're, like, for instance, coming from a more traditional rural town in, let's say, Yemen, you definitely see a lot more veiled women. So it really just depends, and it's important to not overgeneralize.
Okay. Right. And if I did, I apologize.
Oh no, you did not.
Yeah.
You did it.
Okay.
Like, feel free to ask any question.
Yeah. No. And part of the reason I asked this is what happened in the news recently. In Iran, there were two women who were out in a store not wearing hijabs, and some man threw yogurt on them, and they got arrested. He got arrested as well, but the women got arrested for violating the modesty laws or whatever it might be there.
Yeah. So what's happening in Iran is very different. There's a lot of other microaggressions that really play into like what's happening there politically, and hijab is definitely the spark of it. Like, you know, the fact that it is law over there to wear the hijab. However, if we're thinking about the Arab world as opposed to the Middle Eastern world, Middle Eastern is a, you know, a colonial term. Not a lot of Arab Americans really like using Middle East. You know, it really kind of came about and was formed after the fall of the Ottoman Empire in 1914. And so with, you know, with the division of what we know today as the Middle East, that Iran is not an Arab country. So for instance, Iran, Turkey, Israel are part of the Middle East, but they're non-Arab countries. So it is definitely the majority of Iranians in Iran are Muslim.
So sorry to digress a little bit there, but one of the reasons I wanted to talk a little bit about the hijab is many of our students and staff wear them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that many other folks who are in the community kind of have questions about it, don't understand it. I know that at a number of the schools, including McClymonds High School, they do a National Hijab Day where a lot of the kids, male and female, wear the hijab just to experience what it's like, and so it's about gaining understanding more than anything else.
Yes, we did have the privilege this year to celebrate World Hijab Day, and Munira Muslim was definitely the backbone to those celebrations, and she led that event at West Oakland Middle School, as well as our Yemeni American teacher in McClymonds. Her name is Sabah Saeed, which it was an incredible experience. But majority of our Arab students here in Oakland are Yemeni. We do have a diverse Arab community. We do have Arab students coming from Syria as well as Iran, Iraq, and Palestine. But we do see majority of the students are Yemeni, which majority are Muslim. So that's how you see a majority of our students do wear the hijab.
Gotcha. And so, you know, this month is about celebrating the history, the culture, and I would think it's also about making sure that the representation is there, because is it the experience of some people in the community, many people in the community, that they feel kind of overlooked at times in our society as a whole, certainly?
Definitely. I can share experience of, you know, just being in middle school where you're really excited the fact that, oh, you know, it's a history class and there's a part where we're going to be talking about the Middle East, but then you realize it was a very small part where it had to do with 9/11. So representation does matter, and it does affect our students negatively when we're only discussing those narratives and those stories. So we're like strictly in like boxed representation of just like 9/11. This is what it is, and sometimes teachers don't even feel comfortable to have that dialogue. It's really important to have that dialogue and to have those real conversations in classroom as opposed to just ignoring it, because we do have students who report bullying. Some students say other students call them terrorist or raghead or etc. So representation in Arab American Heritage Month is very important. We don't hear narratives and the real lived experiences of Arab Americans, such as major contributions such as Edward Said and Nagi Dayfullah. Nagi Dayfullah immigrated from Yemen in the 1960s, and he organized with Cesar Chavez in the 1973 grape farmers strike, right? And we don't hear that. We don't hear that at that moment it was about 7,000 Yemeni immigrants who marched alongside Cesar Chavez and so many different farmers of all backgrounds. And so we don't hear that. And he was later on killed in late 1973 by a sheriff, deputy sheriff. And he was so amazing because he had the education from back home. He actually came from Aden, which at that time, before then, was colonized by the British. but he knew how to read. I mean, he knew how to speak Spanish, Arabic, English, and he definitely was that. He bridged the barrier between the communities of all backgrounds, and really showed us what solidarity looks like.
Very good. Okay. I mean, obviously, there's so much to celebrate, and
Hmm.
also we have to look at the needs. What are the biggest needs that you see among our Arab American students?
Lack of representation. we we are facing this not only locally but nationally. We don't have ethnic racial category within the census, and so what we've done here is tremendous here in OUSD. I would say I don't know of any other district that's done it, but that's what makes us so exceptional. Is that in 2016 there was a board resolution that was passed, really supporting data desegregation, and that's what allowed us to do the work that we did coming on in this school year. So we have updated in 2021-22, we updated our race categories, which includes all the different diverse Arab ethnic identities from all the different vast Arab countries. And so not a lot of our families know of this because of the language barrier, because of their lack of, just not being able to navigate, technology. And so what we've been doing is tabling local at sites, phone banking. We created an Arab American task force of about eight Arab employees. And so it took it's still an ongoing effort because so far we've been able to identify 1,200 students, and we're missing a lot of students from that data. So we're still outreaching, phone banking, letting families know, hey, there's an opportunity to classify correctly. From there, then we'll be able to really address the needs and being able to identify the needs of our students because we have to identify the discrepancies. Are they receiving mental health services? How, just all the needs that we'll be able to address through our culturally responsive programming.
Very good. Okay, well, I appreciate that. And of course, anybody who's watching this who has any questions can contact the Office of Equity about this and get their names into the mix as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Sabria. Appreciate you. And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time for another edition of Inside OUSD.